I'm Brent James, Intermountain Healthcare's Chief Quality Officer and head of the Intermountain Institute for Healthcare Delivery Research. Welcome to the third module in Intermountain's 100% participation series. Before starting this module, you should have already completed modules number 1 and 2. In module 1, you learned about processes, outputs, and customers. We discussed the ideas of expectations and defined quality as the degree to which we meet or exceed customer expectations. We also introduced 2 tools, tally sheets and process output customer grids. Working with your coach, you use tally methods to create a process output customer grid for your own daily work. In Module 2, we added 2 additional tools, cause and effect diagrams and Pareto charts. A cause and effect diagram is a tool that lists all possible causes, factors, or solutions focused on a specific problem, objective, or topic. You can use a cause and effect diagram as a tally sheet, recording or tallying up specific events as they occur. A Pareto chart makes those tallies into a graph, ordering them from most important or frequent to least important or frequent. They are a graphical form of the 80-20 rule, the idea that, in general, roughly 20% of causative factors produce roughly 80% of results. These tools, cause and effect diagrams and Pareto charts, use data to identify then prioritize problems and opportunities. They help people focus first on the things that matter most, where their actions can have the biggest effect. They're a key part of database problem solving. At the end of Module 2, you did another exercise. Working with your coach, you prioritized the work processes that you had identified using the process outputs customer grid that you created in Module 1. In Module 3, we will add 2 critical definitions. We will cover process failures or defects, along with methods to rapidly and accurately identify them. We will also define quality waste, which shows how higher quality can lead to lower cost. At the end of this module, we assign another exercise. We will ask you to identify and prioritize defects within your own work processes, using tools that you already have, cause and effect diagrams, tally sheets, and Pareto charts. Your list of high priority process failures will also be a list of high priority improvement opportunities. It lays the foundation to generate and test improvement ideas in Module 4. Once you have completed this module, you should debrief its content with your coach or manager. That same person should be available to help you as you do the hands-on exercise. Webster's Dictionary defines a defect as an imperfection that impairs worth or utility, a lack of something necessary for completeness, adequacy, or perfection. When you think of your work as a series of defined processes that produce results, the simplest view of a defect is a failed result. It is a process output that is unfit for its intended use, that is not ideal, or that is limited in usefulness, so that it doesn't go as far as it was intended or fails to achieve as much as it should. It is any mistake that results in dissatisfaction for a customer, a failure to meet expectations. We can extend the idea of a defect, though, beyond process outputs to the operation of the process itself. It is any problem, error, or discrepancy that increases process cycle time or resource use. It is anything that makes us take more time to get the job done, that requires extra steps, that puts us in a recovery mode, that forces us to do it over, or that uses additional effort or supplies to produce the same result. From this inside the operation of the process viewpoint, a defect is sometimes called a process failure. Dr. W. Edwards Deming was the father of modern quality improvement theory. He showed that whenever a defect occurs, it always wastes resources. He defines such quality waste as scrap and rework. Scrap happens when a process produces a result that is so bad that it cannot be used at all. Such a result gets thrown away, it gets tossed on the scrap heap. When that happens, all of the time and effort that went into producing that output is wasted. If you really need the product or service, you have to do it all over again from scratch. Rework happens when a process produces an output that is substandard, but still within the realm where it is possible to correct or repair it. In this case, the extra resources, time, and effort used to fix the initial defect represent waste. The solution to quality waste is to do it right the first time. Analyze, correct, and manage the process so that it produces the right result every time in the first place, rather than finding and responding to a bad result after the process has failed. This is called inspection in quality theory. Move upstream to the failure point in the process and fix the process so that that failure never happens again. From this viewpoint, quality is the same core idea as prevention, but generalized to apply across all circumstances. Dr. Harry Roberts, a professor at the University of Chicago, showed that process failures also produce waste, even when they don't damage the final output. He called this inefficiency waste. It's the extra time and resources that went into a product that could have been avoided through the use of a process that produced the same result while using less time and resources. Dr. Deming showed that thoughtful, clever frontline workers, drawing on fundamental knowledge of how their work processes really operate, could pretty much always find ways to fix process failures that were much, much cheaper than finding and responding to failures after they had occurred. A whole industry grew out of this insight. One major consultant in manufacturing, Phil Crosby, published a series of books called Quality is Free. His title is probably a bit of an oversimplification. Quality isn't really free. It takes real effort to find and correct process failures, or to find the most efficient process for a particular result. It's just that quality really pays quite well. Nearly always, the savings that result from avoiding defects or from finding more efficient processes far outweighs the cost of fixing the processes in the first place. The Japanese term for quality waste is muda, M-U-D-A. When you apply the principles of quality and inefficiency waste, when you put on your muda glasses, you will probably see waste everywhere in the workplace. One good marker of muda waste is frustration and hassle. They nearly always represent a process failure. It's the patient who calls the clinic after a visit asking a question that could and should have been addressed with much less effort during the visit. It's the food tray that went to the wrong floor and never got eaten because the patient had been transferred. It's the respiratory therapist who went to the newborn ICU to perform a scheduled therapy only to find the patient was absent or unavailable, requiring a second visit. It's when a piece of equipment is not in its assigned place so that someone has to go on a search and find mission before they can complete what should have been a simple task. It's that blood specimen that went missing or that wasn't labeled properly, requiring a second draw. It's a pharmacist who is interrupted while preparing a medication, resulting in an incorrect prescription that then has to be redone. Oh, it's the patient who didn't get the ideal antibiotic first thing on admission to the hospital for their community-acquired pneumonia, and then spent 4 days in the ICU on a ventilator before they eventually died. It's the breast cancer surgical path report that was missing a critical piece of information necessary to plan the patient's care, forcing the oncologist to personally call the pathologist to get the necessary information at the same time that the pathologist had to repeat the entire slide review. All of these cases I just shared are real examples. Each was associated with an improvement project that saved money, improved care delivery operations, and in some cases, saved lives. And this is just the short list. We have literally thousands of such examples, and we don't think we've come anywhere close to finding and cataloging them all. When you have the eyes to see, defects, process failures, and quality waste happen around us many times every day. That brings us to the exercise associated with this module. Would you please put on your Muda glasses, then carefully examine your own high priority work processes? In other words, start with the list of high priority work processes that you produced in modules 1 and 2 of this series. Then identify process failures and defects. You might want to use a tally sheet to record actual defect rates. Then build one or more Pareto charts to list common sources of defects and process failures within your own work in priority order. In creating your Pareto charts, you might want to include factors beyond just defect frequency to help you prioritize. For example, some failures may have bigger impact on your customers than others. Some may require more time to correct when they occur compared to others. You may find that some should be easier to address and correct. For example, you might already know a proven solution. How might you build these other factors into your Pareto charts? Your local coach should be a real help. Be sure to debrief with your coach before you start the exercise. As you do the exercise, share any problems you encounter or insights you discover with your coworkers and, of course, with your coach.